With Twitter acting the way they have been lately, even going as far as banning accounts like Sci-Hub, it's as good a time as any to talk about the Fediverse and platforms like Mastodon. If this was before mid-2018, I would not have cared about Mastodon, because after that point was when they decided to bring in ActivityPub. So today, Mastodon is a federated service that is a part of the Fediverse that not only allows you to interact with Mastodon users, but also allows you to interact with users on all of the other ActivityPub platforms. I've done a video on ActivityPub, so if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link up on the top right-hand corner, or if you're on anything else, there'll be a link in the description down below. But as a microblogger, it has all of the general features you'd expect. So I can go say, reply to this post right here. I can say something like, that's pretty, I can spell, awesome. And I can go and post that. In this case, they're not called a tweet, but they're called a toot. It's the exact same thing. I would just call them a post if it was my platform. We can go and like a post by clicking on the star down here, and we can even go and repost stuff as well. Now, unlike Twitter, you can't go and do a repost and add a comment to it, which is something I would like to see, but being able to repost stuff is perfectly fine. Now, because Mastodon is a federated service, which basically means a bunch of people host their own instances of Mastodon, and they all connect to each other basically in like this big Mastodon web, you can't really be banned from Mastodon because there isn't a moderation team that oversees all of the instances. So the absolute worst that can happen to you is you can be banned from an instance, and then if you make your own instance, that instance you are banned from could then go and block your instance, but you're still able to actually use Mastodon from that point. So if, say, someone's trolling you and you don't like them, there's no moderation team you can go complain to, so just go and block that user. And the way you do that is pretty simple. So let's say that you don't like Brian Lunduke, for example. So what you can go and do is click on these three dots down here next to any of his posts, and you'll see a mute, block, report, and block domain button. So mute basically is like shadow banning that user from your account. So what'll happen is you won't be able to see any of his posts, but he'll still be able to see everything that you post. As for a block, it works like a block on any other platform, so you won't see anything that he does, and he won't see anything that you do. And then reporting is going to let you report it to the owners of your instance, and you have the option of also forwarding the report to the owner of his instance as well. And then the last one in here actually is kind of interesting. So because Mastodon is a federated service, let's say that someone made an instance and they made a bunch of accounts on there they're using just to, maybe they're trying to get you into like a Bitcoin scam or something like that. You can actually go and just block that entire domain and not see a single post from any of its users. And there's some other fairly normal things like being able to attach stuff to a post, making a poll. You can change the visibility of your post, so you can make it so only followers can see it, which actually is kind of cool if you want to have like a private account or something like that. And you can also go and add a content warning. So let's say that you want to, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about spoilers for some sort of series. You can make that a content warning, so people who don't want to see spoilers for that don't have to see it. And one of the things that makes Mastodon so much better than Twitter is the much higher character limit. So it's set to 500. You can find some instances that are running a fork of Mastodon which have it set to higher, but 500 is generally what you're going to see. Now, the reason why 500 is so much better is because I never actually find myself running out of characters. You might think 500 is not really that many characters, but if you're used to doing stuff on Twitter where you have to like shrink stuff down into the form of a tweet, this gives you a lot more freedom to actually expand upon an argument. And from what I've seen, most people tend to be much more willing to actually have a proper discussion on Mastodon, whereas Twitter, it's more like, hey, I'm going to make a hot take about this, and I'm going to make a hot take about you, and it's just not really conducive to a good discussion. But along with that, something that does really help is that you have the ability to go and redraft a post. So let's say that this post right here, I wasn't a fan of what I said. So what we can go and do is click on the dots here, and we'll see a delete or a delete and redraft. I have no idea how Twitter does not have a redraft button, but it is really useful to have. And then something I only found out about fairly recently is how people are getting these emotes in their names. So this person right here has a GNU logo and a Debian logo. So in any text box inside of Mastodon, what you can go and do is, like inside of Discord, if you write a colon and then the name of an emote, it'll basically let you write that emote out. So let's say that we want a GNU logo, and we also want a Gentoo logo, for example. And then if we go and post this, then as we will see, give that 1 second, we now have a GNU logo and a Gen 2 logo. Now, when you first load up Mastodon, it's probably not going to look like this because most instances probably won't have the advanced interface as the default choice. So if we go into our settings here, as we'll see, there's this button right here. Just go and tick this button and that will actually enable that. So let's just go and get rid of this and see what it looks like with the default interface. So go back to mastodon.social. As we'll see, it's more of a Twitter layout. Personally, I don't like this because when I use Twitter, I also use TweetDeck because I like to have my posts on one side and then my notifications right next to it. Now, in the case that you do something to get yourself banned from an instance, that doesn't mean that you're going to lose all of your followers and all of your posts, because what you can go and do is export all of your data and then move it somewhere completely different. And you don't necessarily have to move it to another Mastodon instance. You could even go and take it over to something like Pleroma if you wanted to instead. So if we go down to the import and export button down here, what we'll see is we have a button to request our archive. And if we go and do that, give it a second, it's going to go and try to compile the archive, and once that's done, then we'll be able to go and download that, and this is just in a standard ActivityPub format that all of the ActivityPub platforms use. Now, when you're trying to join Mastodon, there isn't just one place to join it from. There's no like youtube.com or twitter.com where every single user of the platform makes their account in the one place. There are websites like, say, joinmastodon.org, which do list out different instances, but these will be curated based on the instances that they want to list out. So if you wanted to say like let's go to general and let's see what's in here. Let's say you wanted something like, for example, I actually don't know what's in here. Let's say you want something like mastodon.online. So you can go and see the rules for that instance, see if they're actually accepting new users, see if it's something that you would fit into, and if you don't like that, well, you can go find a different instance, or if you can't find anything that really fits what you want to do, or you just want to have complete control, you can always just go and start up your own instance because all of the software to run Mastodon is completely open source. And you don't just have to use Mastodon from your computer because there are Android apps that exist as well. And the two most popular ones seem to be Fedilab and Tusky. I'm not really sure which one's better. I haven't tried them out myself because I'm not a big fan of having social media on my phone. But if it is something you want to use, these seem to be the most popular options. Now, I don't know how useful these will be to other people, but I've got two tools here that are really, really useful for working with Mastodon. One of them is scheduler.mastodon.tools, because Mastodon doesn't have a way to actually schedule a post. Now, I have no idea what's actually running in the background. There might be other schedulers you can use as well, which you could host yourself, but from what I've seen, this one is working pretty well. And the other one I'd recommend using is this right here, crossposter.masto.dante.com.br. This is basically a Twitter Mastodon cross-poster, so you can post something on Twitter, it'll be sent to your Mastodon account, you can post something on Mastodon, it'll be sent to your Twitter account. Now, this one is open source, but the dev doesn't really recommend hosting this one because it has a lot of moving parts because it's designed to be used by multiple users at once. So there are easier ones you can go and use. I believe we go down to notes on usage. Yep, here we go. We have things like Mastodon to Twitter that you can use as well. And this one seems to be much, much easier to go and host yourself. Now, Mastodon isn't the only microblogger in the Fediverse. There are other options out there like Pleroma, and Pleroma basically seems to be the same as Mastodon with way more customization. Or you could use things like, say, Librem Social, and there are a bunch of others out there as well. You can find the Wikipedia article on ActivityPub, and I believe I mentioned a couple of them in my ActivityPub video. So if Mastodon is starting to interest you, and you want to go make your own instance, one way you can do that is over on Linode. If it runs on Linux, you can run on Linode. They have the distros you'd expect available, like Ubuntu and Debian, but also Arch and Gentoo because why not? They've got multiple server plans available, so whether you want to host a blog or a personal VPN, you know there's going to be one that fits you. Going forward, I'll be using Linode to host all of my community game nights. If you need help, Linode has 24/7, 365 support available by phone regardless of your plan size. So right now, you guys can get started on Linode with $100 credit by going to the link on screen or in the description down below. Linode was in the game 3 years before Amazon entered cloud computing, so you know they know their stuff. A huge thank you to Linode for sponsoring the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Chris, Joachim, Donald, Michael, Andrew, Nathan, David Montezar, Will, Brennan, Chico Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Mitchell, Peter, Tony Tushar, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to go support my work, then the links down below to my Patreon, Subscribe Star, LibrePay, all of that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, which is available basically anywhere, and then this channel is available on Odyssey, Library, and BitChute if you want to watch on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.